All right, welcome to the You Can Mentor podcast. It's your boy, Zach Garza here, and I'm with my friend, Maggie Middleton. Maggie, say hi.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me here, Zach. Good to be with you.
I'm so excited to get to hear from Maggie today. She's got a bunch of really, really cool stuff. Maggie and I connected. How did we meet, Maggie?
I think you had I think a couple of people told you about me. Just through kind of the
Yeah.
faith-based nonprofit and mentoring world. We had a few mutual friends, and I think you'd reached out several months ago. We tried to connect and that didn't work, and then you reached out again and we talked and realized we just kind of had a lot in common in the youth mentoring space. So we had a great first conversation.
I didn't know that I was talking to someone who's so famous, but as soon as I found out all about your past and what you're passionate about, I was like, oh, so this is why people keep on telling me about Maggie Middleton. So
Well, I don't know about being famous, but I do get excited about this work, and I do get excited about just coming alongside young people and just empowering mentors and just helping them just really show care for young people. That I feel like is my life's calling, and I just get really excited about it. So that's why I'm here.
that's awesome, Maggie. Now, not to be too weird, but we're friends on Instagram,
Yeah.
and I saw that you just finished a big race.
I did. Well, I actually did 2 races this weekend. They actually were small, but I do have a big goal. So I found I'm not a fast runner at all. I do a lot of walk running, but the past few years I've kind of set some big goals for myself. So this year's the biggest goal I've set. My goal is to do 20 races this year. So I have done, I don't know if you know that. So I have some hashtags that kind of allude to that. So I have done 15 races since 2020 since 2024 started. So I have 5 left to do. So I'll get 3 planned for November and then 2 in December. But what's cool about that is that my running really just started as a way for me to kind of just be physically healthy, but it's also a great kind of way to be mentally healthy as well. My own self care, but through that, I didn't even mean to, but I started bringing kids with me. It was totally accidental. And so I kind of have this gaggle of middle school and high school girls that come with me. Not this weekend. I did solo races this weekend, but a lot of the races they come with me. And it's actually one of the things I love to share with mentors is that I really think mentoring is about hospitality. It's just about inviting kids with you into what you're already doing. And whether that's grocery shopping or going for a run. And I have found someone in Lexington who actually owns a racing company. And he gives me free race registrations for our mentees. And so they come and sometimes they walk/run them. I've got one girl who does them really, really fast. She always beats me by at least like 20 minutes. And we all have a good time together. So yeah, so that's part of what I did this weekend. So glad you're able to see that.
And always, always able to tie mentoring into it, aren't
Yeah.
you, Maggie?
You didn't
You're
even know I
just a
was gonna
true
say
pro.
that. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't know. Just, I was like,
Yeah.
man, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
all about mentoring. All right. So I have your bio here,
Yeah.
and I'm going to just hit on some key points. So Maggie is in Lexington, Kentucky. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's right. Home of horses and
Okay.
basketball. Yeah.
Horses and basketball. One
Yeah.
of my favorite things.
Yes.
I'm not a big horse fan.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've worked for Machi Lexington, which is a initiative of Lexington Leadership Foundation.
Yep.
It's a one-on-one mentoring-based program that serves kids whose parents are incarcerated.
Yep.
You've been doing that since 2010, where
Yep.
you are the program director.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're also, which this is, oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
You're also a regional coach for Leadership Foundation for their youth mentoring network, which is
Yep.
a lot of fun. You get to encourage and serve several mentoring programs nationwide.
Yeah.
You advocate for the power of youth mentoring, and you're passionate about connecting positive adults with the young people in your program.
Yep.
Also,
Yeah.
besides Amachi, you have served as your own personal mentor, like you just said.
Mhm.
For some kiddos, you have an MA in Christian Ministries from Asbury. You're working on your MS in Youth Development Leadership from Clemson. Go
Yep.
Tigers.
That's
And
right.
you love to travel, read, kayak, and
Yep.
do 5Ks. So
Yep.
you're busy, Maggie, aren't you?
I do say busy. That is true. So not much downtime. So.
Cool. Hey, so tell us a little bit about what is Leadership Foundation as a whole?
Yep. So leadership foundations, there are probably, I'm going to get this number wrong, but I want to say there's around 40 leadership foundations. A lot of them are in the United States, but there are also some outside of the US that are global. And they all just love the cities and the communities that they're in, and they all are there to serve them. We believe that each city is a living, just thriving organism that has its own life, has its own beauty, and each one is unique and dynamic and has its own strengths and assets. So, what happens in the city of Lexington, Kentucky, is different than what might happen in Waco, Texas, or in Knoxville, Tennessee, where there's also a leadership foundation, or in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And so we're each unique and local, and we want to serve our cities. We want to respond to the really beautiful things that are happening, but also where there might be some obstacles. And we want to connect with people. We want to connect with the local faith-based community there. We want to connect also with universities and schools and businesses, with people of faith and also people of goodwill, who just want to see our cities just be the most beautiful place they can be. There is a verse in Zechariah that talks about this beautiful prophecy of our older generations sitting on their porch, and just basically enjoying the neighborhood. I don't think that's the word in the Old Testament, but also kids playing in the streets and enjoying basically the city life, without fear, and just enjoying life together. And that's kind of our vision, that our cities would be full of peace. They would be full of prosperity. They would be full of people being in community together. So each leadership foundation is unique. We do, because we're responding to unique cities, and unique places and unique challenges and unique strengths. But we are also tied and connected together. So we do have a youth mentoring network. There are a lot of us who do respond to the needs of our cities through the power of youth mentoring. I personally think that if you want to impact a community, mentoring a young person is one of the best and most impactful things that you can do. So there are a good number of us who are a part of this youth mentoring network. And as you said, I do have the just wonderful privilege of getting to serve as a regional coach. So I'm an active part of that cohort. And so I get to learn from other people, but I also get to serve as a coach, where I get to encourage and just kind of share what I've learned since, over the past 14 and a half years now. So that's a little bit about Leadership Foundations. Love being a part of that community and that cohort. Really just having people all over the country I can learn from, and who are involved in this just beautiful city, and youth mentoring work.
That's awesome, Maggie. Yeah, you were on our call last week for the Learning Lab,
Yeah.
and I just
Yeah.
loved your wisdom. You had so much experience to give, and I'm excited to learn today about positive youth development. Is that right?
Yes, you got it. Yep, absolutely. Yep. Yep. You got the term.
That's right.
Yep.
So today we're talking about PYD,
Mhm.
and I was talking to Maggie on the phone the other day, and she was just talking about PYD and all of these things. And I was like, Maggie, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have never heard of this before. So she sent me article after article, and she sent me just a bunch of stuff. And I said, Maggie, you have to come on the pod and teach us about PYD.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
here we are.
Here we are. Yep. Yep.
So what is positive youth development, Maggie?
Yep. So, in a nutshell, it is a way of interacting and engaging with young people that, in the most simplest term, it focuses on the good stuff. So it focuses on their assets, their strengths, their aspirations, their goals, their just the things that internally drive them. It's the way we talk. It's about the conversations we have with kids. It's about the things that we do with them. It's about the opportunities we try to engage in with them. It's really a way of seeing youth not as problems to be solved. Because I think a lot of times when we work with kids, it can be really easy to say, like, oh, that kid is in the way. I gotta get them out of the way. Or if kids have had really hard things happen, or if they're engaging maybe in some sort of risky behavior or they've got some sort of obstacles, it can be really easy to get in this mindset of, oh, I've got to fix this problem. There's this project that I need to take care of. PYD would say that's not how we want to think. PYD encourages us to think that they're not problems to be solved. Really, kids are full of resources. They're really just gold mines. They're a treasure trove of just so much good stuff. And they're just ready for us to harness those resources. Sometimes kids are very, very aware of the gifts and talents and resources they have. A lot of times they're not. And sometimes that's just a part of the natural kind of uh, just process of identity development that happens in adolescence. And that's a very normal process, right? But then if you add on, like we work with kids that are impacted by incarceration, by parental incarceration, and that means they've got some trauma that's happening. And so when you add on trauma just on top of hormonal issues and just trying to survive teenagehood or, and trying to, COVID, gosh, that did a number on all of us, but especially young people. It can be hard to remember that, wow, I've got resources, I've got gifts, I've got things to offer this world. So PYD gives us so many tools for the adult's toolbox to remind us that our young people, man, they are gifts. And we have so much to learn from them. And that's really what it's about. It's also about empowering our young people and not fixing them. It can be really easy, especially when young people have had hard things happen, to think, I want to make this hard thing that they've gone through not true. I want to make it so that this young person, if they're in my program, I want to make it so that their dad didn't have to go to jail. Well, I don't have a magic wand. I don't have a time machine. So I can't make it so that my mentees haven't had to deal with parental incarceration. And that breaks my heart, right? I come to this work, and I think most of our mentors come to this work because they're empaths, and something in their heart is torn and is broken that a young person has had to deal with the hard things. So we want to fix it, but we have to stop and wrestle with that. Remember that we can't fix it. And when we have the mentality that we want to fix someone, that makes them feel like they're broken, right? And no one wants to feel like they're broken and like they need to be fixed. But what PYD would encourage us to do is we can empower a young person. We can empower them to think about, what is my story and how do I how can I rise up above it? How can I respond to it and still be a young person that can contribute to this world? That I don't let the circumstances of my hard story define me, but I'm still really strong and I have so many resources to give.
So how do you empower a young person? Because everything that you're saying right now, Maggie, I'm just like, man, she's just like talking about my childhood. Like I can remember I didn't think that I was smart until like I was in my mid-20s because no one had ever told me.
Yep.
And I didn't know that I had a gift in this or in that until someone came along and told me. And some of those things I didn't know till I was, 28, 29. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is kind of embarrassing. But how would you go about, or how would you advise a mentor to, hey, this kid has these kinds of issues, let's empower them. Here's how to do that.
Yep. So I think part of it starts with, and I first want to say this. a PYD mindset does not ignore the hard things. It does not ignore the obstacles that a young person has been through, because that would be dishonest. It would be dishonest of me to engage with the mentee and ignore the fact that they've had some trauma in their life. I think PYD does encourage us to also be trauma informed, and I think that is just so critical. But what PYD also tells us is that that trauma does not need to define a young person. And so we keep that trauma in mind because we realize sometimes it might impact the way a young person communicates, a trust level they can have, and just the way they might see things in life. But I think with a mentor, it does mean that we come to the table knowing just that you are not your trauma, that you're not the worst decision you've made. You are not other people's decisions. And that believing that each young person we come into contact with is full of promise and potential. So that's what it starts with, is that we're mentoring because we believe that we're working with children of promise. Our tagline with Amachi is that we are people of faith and people of goodwill mentoring children of promise. We don't use the line children of prisoners. We don't refer to our kids as children of prisoners, even though they are impacted by incarceration. We refer to them as children of promise. So I think that's step number one, is realizing, what is my identifier? My identifier is that I'm a child of promise, right? That I've got so much potential. And then I think the second step is, and hopefully you have great support people helping you as a mentor, but you are working to identify just those strengths you see in your mentee. And some mentees are going to have a hard time knowing those things about themselves, and some are going to be really great at them. Like, I have some mentees that are like, yeah, I know I'm beautiful. And they, are really good at just, and I'm like, yeah, you go. I'm glad that you've got self-esteem. I'm here for that. And some mentees really do struggle with that. Like you, I struggled with that same thing, Zach, and I've seen other kids struggle with, like, man, I feel like the dumb kid, right? And so that's where mentors can say, here's what I see in you. I'll share one really quick example. I worked with a mentee once that, just story about me. I am famously terrible with directions, like so incredibly bad. And I was with a mentee once. It was one of our first outings, and I had parked. We were going to just a park. We were just going to hang out, and I parked my car in this weird little way that I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to remember how to get back to my car. I hope we make it home. Like, we may be sleeping in this park. Who knows what's going to happen? And she just, right away as we got back, she led me to my car. Like, she knew exactly how to get there. And I said, wow. I said, that is amazing that you did that. And it was, and this is very critical. And I said, you are really good with directions. And I think she was in middle school at this time, probably 7th grade. And I said, you know what this tells me about you? And again, I said this because there's so many teachable moments. And I said, you have what's called really good spatial awareness. And I said, do you know what that means? She said, not really. And I said, it means you can be in an area and just kind of know where things belong. And I said, I don't have that. I can get lost in a paper bag. I don't know how to read a map. Like, I'm so bad at this, right? My coworkers could tell you lots of stories about me. And I said, let me ask you something. Are you good at math? Like, does that come easy to you? She said, well, yeah. How did you know that? And I said, because people who have good spatial awareness, they're good at math. And do you know what else about people who have spatial awareness and are good at math? They tend to be engineers and scientists, and they have all these really cool jobs. I said, have you ever thought about wanting to do that one day? And she's like, well, not really. And kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, I think you might be an engineer one day. So I don't know if you want to do that. Like, you don't have to, but like, might be something to think about. She's like, okay. And then we just kind of went on. And so I share that story to say, what a moment. I was about to get lost back on the way to my car. And I think sometimes we can kind of have fun, like, let me be self-deprecating about Miss Maggie, because I am great at many things. But one of the things I'm not good at is directions. But wow, let me pump up my mentee and let that be a chance to say, you are so good at this, and you can be my teacher in this. And I think there's so many other things. I work with a mentee right now. Man, she is headed for the healthcare field. She's in 10th grade. She knows she wants to be a nurse. She got a 96 in physics last year. And she's like, well, it was just intro to physics. And I said, listen, Miss Maggie was not getting a 96 in any science class. I took the physics for dummies, and I'm lucky I got a C. I'm not a math and science person. It's why I work in the nonprofit program director field. And so finding those every moment opportunities to say, you're so good at that. Let me pump you up. Just the smallest things to the biggest things, like, hey, are your grades good? Yes, high five. And if they're not good, okay, how can we work on that? So it's identifying those strengths and continuing to build on those things, because every kid has strengths. It doesn't matter who they are. And so like me, it's definitely not my sense of direction, and it's not my sense of math, but I'm good at being with people, right? I'm great at connecting with people. And those are the things that I needed help understanding. And with the mentees that I work on, finding out this. Another thing I'll say about that too, I think for me and you, Zach, who we felt like we were dumb. We felt like we were not the smartest kids in the room. And other kids that we see, some of it is just, and I'm not going to get into this whole thing really, but sometimes kids just haven't learned their learning style, right? They may not have realized that I learn when I'm really active, or when I'm doing artistic things, or I learn by connecting with people. They might be in a classroom where they're needing to listen to things all day, and they can't learn like that. So that's another thing I've been able to practice, and I encourage my mentors to practice, is how does your mentee learn? Let's really engage with that. And so I think that is definitely a second step, is just call it out. Call out what you see, even if you think it's the smallest thing. For that kid, it's not going to be a small thing. And then I think step number 3 is we keep developing those things. So if you see this kid has spatial awareness, that means they're good at math. Let's talk about careers that might, utilize that, and keep bringing up, man, you're so smart. And every time you get a chance to tell a kid they're smart, tell them. I believe you can never over encourage someone. You said this on our call last week, Zach. It was so beautiful. You said you can never over celebrate. I think it's the same concept. Encouragement is never ever wasted. And so letting kids know you're smart, you're so thoughtful. And so even those little things we see them do, call it out.
And I think one thing, if you want to go even a step further, is, I don't know the first thing about healthcare. I don't know, I was in the Science for Dummies class with you.
Yes.
But I got some friends who are doctors.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, so if you can connect your mentee to someone who specializes or who's in that profession, then, you're just hitting a grand slam as a mentor.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. And that's something we encourage a lot too, that we tell our mentors a lot, is that we absolutely don't want you to be everything and everyone to your mentee. You can't do that. No one can fill every single role. But, and I can't be a healthcare professional. I don't know what it's like to be a nurse or a doctor. I don't know what med school is like. But we've actually got a lot of med school mentors that volunteer with us. Man, what can I do? I can connect her to one of those people. Man, what a blessing that would be for her. Sorry, I think I cut you off, and I did not mean to, but wanted to just emphatically agree with you.
Great, Maggie. Calling out the gold, right? Like that. I can't help but think of, this is my son, whom I love, with whom I'm well pleased.
Yes.
And I'm just like, man, if Jesus needs encouragement, if he needs his things pointed out, then how much more do our kids? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But how is this PYD connected to God, connected to faith? How we're wired?
Man, I think there's such a strong connection, Zach. While PYD is not an intrinsically Christian model, and that's not how it was developed, I think it has very strong Christian theological implications. I think one starts with just the fact that what we believe about the creation story, that God created us out of goodness and out of love, that we are his beautiful and beloved and delighted in creation. So if we believe that about creation generally, and we can believe that about ourselves specifically, that's also what we believe about the kids that we work with, right? And so as I work with mentees, I believe that God cares for them just so, so deeply, right? And I believe that God sees their gifts in them, and that there's just goodness in them. He's not punitive towards them. He's not punishing them. He's not just trying to get them to stop doing something bad. He's trying to get them to be their most Jesus-like self, which is their thriving self, right? For them to be doing the things for them to be living into the gifts that he's given them. And so knowing that the truth of creation, the truth of God's creation, the truth of scripture is that God delights in us. And I think that's what PYD tells us, is that we see our kids, it's not just about getting them to stop doing a negative or risky behavior. It's about seeing them holistically, that seeing that kids are cared about, that whether it's their mind, body, soul, or spirit, all of them at their root, there is goodness there. Even if they're struggling to maybe make positive decisions, we believe that they have the ability to make those decisions. And I believe, I was reminded today that of the scripture, I think it's in 1 Corinthians. I should know this. I'm a seminary graduate, but I forget where scriptures are sometimes. But that we were bought with a price, right? We were bought with a price through the blood of Jesus. Well, what does that tell us? That's a pretty worthy price, right? So if we were bought with that price, that means we're worth a whole lot. And so if I believe that about me, I believe that about our mentees, and that God just sees us as just so beautiful and redeemed and holy and loved. And PYD gives us those tools to be reminded of that even when kids are maybe working something out, working out difficult emotions, and they're doing it through some not so great decisions, that at the end of the day, they too were bought with a price. They too they're a masterpiece. Ephesians 2:10 reminds us that that God created us to be a masterpiece, and that there's just beauty especially when we submit to him, and that he's also out of that. And this is also part of PYD, that not just that we love ourselves and have a good self-esteem, but also use that to do good things for others. Part of that verse is that he's called us to do good works. Well, part of PYD is that if we really are encouraging and seeing the good things in kids, they are going to contribute to the world around them. They are going to learn how to love other people well. They're going to serve their communities. They're going to figure out their identity in a way that helps them care for other people. And so the alignment for me is just so very clear. It is about honoring just the people around me. It's about honoring God's children. And that's one of the things I love about this kind of philosophy.
So like, I know for me, one thing that the Lord's really been put on my heart over this past season has been grace. And just, I am such just performance addict. Like, I just love setting goals and accomplishing them.
Yep.
And I want to set my mind to something, and I want to do it with excellence, and I want to check it off the list, and I want to go on to the next thing. And that's great when it comes to projects. But just like what you said, when it comes to people, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So God isn't trying to fix us. Thank God.
Sure.
I often fall into the trap of trying to fix other people, whether it's my mentee or, check this now, the people that volunteer for me. Sometimes I'm like, hey, why can't you just get it together? Like, I've told you what to do. Why can't you just do it?
Yeah.
Which is grace. Grace abounds. Grace abounds. And I picture Jesus, right? And if Jesus were to walk in the room and have a conversation with that volunteer, have a conversation with our kid, then what would he focus in on? What would he talk about? How would he carry himself? What are his nonverbals? And I just can't help but come back to grace. Like, he abounds with grace. He's overflowing with grace. And man, like, so much of what I'm hearing is just, hey, like, focus on the good stuff, patience, give grace. Like, they have gold sometimes it just takes a while just to kind of dig it out. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I would for sure agree with that. And I think, I was at I typically go every year to the National Mentoring Summit, which I know
yeah.
you've been to before, Zach. And I remember this speaker. I don't always remember all the speakers, so I remember this one and this one particular line, and I just thought it was so beautiful. And this woman said, "Kids grow into the conversations around them." Um, I don't know, that's probably 4 or 5 years ago, and that has just always stuck with me, that and I think not just kids, but all of us, we grow into what the people are saying, right? We grow into, um, the language around us. So if it's bad language, if it's negative stuff, like, "You're never going to amount to anything, you're stupid, you're worthless." That's what's gonna happen, right? That's what we're gonna believe about ourselves. And of course, we know as people committed to Jesus, that's not true, right? That there is goodness, there's redemption in us. But if we have people around us saying, "Hey, you know what, Zach, you're not stupid. You're actually really smart and really, really gifted." You're going to learn how to believe that, and you will grow into that, because look at what you've done. Look at this really cool movement you started. The same is true for me. Like, gosh, when I first started this job, I was not about to speak in front of other people, And a couple weeks ago, I shared about Amachi in front of almost 500 people. 10 years ago, you never would have caught me doing that. And a lot of that is because of people around me and the conversations I've had around me of saying, "Maggie, there's a deeper gift for you." And I think that as mentors and as mentoring leaders, we get to have those conversations around kids and to say, "You are not destined for bad things. Um, you are actually destined for really great, beautiful, good things." Now, when kids have had lots of trauma happen, it can be so hard to give yourself permission to dream, because you're waiting for the next bad thing to happen. But if we can be willing to have these really big, beautiful, positive, big God dream conversations around kids, I believe that's what they're going to grow into, because that's the identity that God has put in them.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, if you grow up in a home where all you hear is the bad, just negative after
Mhm.
negative after
Yeah.
negative after negative every day, that's 18 years, 18
The-
times 365. Like I said earlier, I can't do math, but that's a lot.
yeah.
And so
So much. Yep.
my kids hear encouragement all day. "Oh my gosh, Zach, you're so good at this. Oh, Steven, you're so
Mhm.
awesome. Jojo, you're so beautiful. I love you so much." And
Yeah.
just like that is going to do a number on your identity, on your psyche. And so,
Yes.
man, like as mentors, I'm just like, let's just focus on the good and let's trust God with the bad. And He
Exactly.
will fix it. I promise you, in His timing. But so much of me wants to fix a kid out of fear. Like
Exactly.
I'm terrified that if I don't teach them, then they're going to end up here, or this is going to happen, or this. So I have to talk about this. I have to point this out. And so much of mentoring in positivity, this isn't about being like a rah, like, "Oh, I'm a cheerleader, I'm going to fake it." No. It's about having faith that if a kid's doing one thing right and 99 things wrong, focus on that one thing and trust that God is going to do the 99 in His perfect timing.
Mhm.
So,
Exactly.
um,
Yep. I agree
that's
with
great.
True.
Okay, so I want to talk about three things,
Yeah.
kind of big. I want to talk about the big three,
Mhm.
and then the 5 C's, and
Yes.
then the 40 assets. So
Yeah.
those are the main things that I want to hit before we hang up.
Yep.
So talk about the big three.
Yep. So the big three are kind of the big kind of overarching features that help kind of guide a positive youth development approach. So the first one, that I would hope is pretty obvious, is just the crucial significance of a positive youth adult relationship, and that's just provide a caring relationship. And that means that we're consistent, that we're showing up, that we're there, that we let our young people know that we are there for them, that we're showing up, whatever that consistent nature is for you. For our program, our expectations are once a week. We do it on a community based kind of schedule. and context, but it's just so crucial that you're showing up just constantly and all the time and really fulfilling that relationship. And I'll say too, as I'm doing this, as I'm engaging in this master's program, focusing on youth development, and I think just about every article I've read, there's, lots of different theories I read. That's the thing that is consistent across pretty much everything I've read, is that relationships, that's the magic sauce in no matter how we do youth development, no matter what we think about it, a young person having a consistent adult. That's the most important thing. And then the second thing that is part of that second part of the big three, is high expectation messages. And we've just talked about that, right? That not only you are smart, but you can do this. That I believe you are capable of more than just passing. You can do more than just survive this life, but I think that you can thrive. I think that are there ways that you can push yourself? I we did an event. We have a camp partner that we work with, and they do all sorts of cool outdoor things. And they have a 40-foot rock wall with a zip line. I got very peer pressured into doing it myself. I didn't want to, but my mentee was there, so then I was at the top of the wall with her. But being able to say to mentees, like, I think that you can do that. Like, if you want to, I think that you can do that. If you want to go to college, I'm going to work with you and help you do that. If you want to put yourself out there and try out for the school play or the basketball team, you don't have to sit on the sidelines. I believe that you can try, and that you can do these things. And so along with that, there's also other folks who also say that part of the big three is just skill building things. And I think this goes along with high expectation messages. So providing opportunities for kids just to build skills. So for us, we have this big, beautiful community center with this really cool kitchen. So we have matches that will come and cook together and teach kids how to cook. For other kids, it might be, I was very brave once and let my mentee have a driving lesson in my car. So my heart rate only went up a lot. Things like that, but also maybe outdoor skills or whatever those skills are that a kid wants to learn, maybe study skills, but those opportunities for skill building. And then that third one is, I'm forgetting it already. Zach, how did I already forget it? I wrote it down even, so I'm going to pull up my notes. So sorry. Give me just
No, it's okay.
a quick second. I've got
No,
it. A blank. Man, how did I do that? Where did
So
it go?
much anticipation. No, just to kind of, as you trying to find it, I always love to say that you can't encourage a kid enough. And when you open up a kid's chest and insert courage, that's encouragement, because kids need courage to do what they want to do, to dream. Kids need to try out for the school play, to do the things that they don't think that they can do. It takes courage, and that is encouragement.
Yeah, so I love that. That's great. Now I remember, my mind went blank for a second. The third one is we want to provide meaningful participation. And this also kind of coincides with providing leadership opportunities. So what this means is, if I mentioned my mentee, she really has strong aspirations of going into the healthcare field. So meaningful participation would be like, can I introduce her to someone I know who's a nurse? Could we maybe even shadow at a local hospital? She herself, and she didn't need my help with this, she just found it on her own because she's very driven, but she was able to find like a week-long kind of healthcare camp the week after school ended. And so it got her even more excited about this. For a kid who's really into music, this might mean taking them to listen to some live music. We have this thing in Lexington called an instrument petting zoo that goes to different just community events. And it's where kids can just kind of pick up instruments and kind of play with them and kind of feel what they're like. So maybe for an elementary school kid who is learning that like, hey, I like music and I might like to play an instrument one day, that lets them kind of play around with that thought. Kid who's really creative and artistic, do art activities with them. For kids who are older, this is where we also want to provide leadership opportunities, right? So last week, we have a group mentoring component with our local middle school where I lead kind of a drug prevention curriculum. I took my mentee who's in high school with me because that's the middle school she went to. She helped me lead class. And so she got to lead some kids just a little bit younger than her, and she loved it. She did a great job. She just exercised such great compassionate leadership. The sixth graders were asking when she was going to come back. They didn't care about me. They wanted her to come back and help lead some more because I felt very cared about by her. And it was cool just to have someone just a few years older. And so providing those leadership opportunities where they're not just receiving services from us, but they are given opportunity to practice how they can impact those around them as well. So those are the big three. So yeah.
So I've got two things that, as you were talking, that kind of hit me is like, that's generational mentoring. That's that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know why it is, but my kids, they love the guys that I mentor. Like they come over every week and we have a meal together and talk about Jesus, we talk about their marriages and things like that. And like my kids will wait at the window and just wait for all of them to pull up. And these guys say things and my kids think it's the most amazing things in the world. And I'm like, guys, I've said that 50 times, but there's just something about it. And then the second thing that, I totally forgot what the second thing was, but that first thing was good. So, I just think it's mind blowing how just showing up, like I say showing up is 85% of just, being a good mentor. Cause if you just show up, I got faith that the Lord, he'll do something. And so it's nuts.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
What about those 5 C's, Maggie?
Yep. So the 5 C's, the 5 C's are essentially kind of that. It's a kind of a double-edged thing here. Don't want to say the word sword, but part of it, these are the outcomes we are working towards when we are utilizing PYD, but it's also things that we can be working on. So it's both the process and the outcome. So the first of the C's is confidence. So in confidence, just meaning, how do I feel about myself? Do I have overall just like, I like myself? Just kind of that general overall feeling of goodness, right? The second one is competence. And so competence is similar to confidence, and it has to do with feeling good about yourself, but it's a little more narrow. It means that I feel good about the things I set out to do. So it's especially related to things like social efforts. So like, I know that Zach, you have led a mentoring program for young men. So you may have worked on this a lot. Do I know what it means to shake a man's hand, look him in the eye and say, hi, my name is Zach. Do I know how to tie a tie, right? Kind of those social skills. I work with a lot of kids who, when we talk to their caregivers about why they want to mentor, they talk about wanting them to grow in social skills, wanting to know how to make a new friend, wanting to, I think knowing how to ask for help, especially in academics, is a big one. That's something I talk to kids about a lot. But also academics is a whole another thing. Do I know what it means to study for a test? Do I know what it takes to do my homework without getting completely overwhelmed by it? The third C is connection. And that means I've got positive bonds with people and places. So just the fact that we are mentoring, that we are working on building a mentoring relationship between an adult and a young person, we are building a connection right there. And that's a beautiful thing. But as you said too, Zach, this also can lead towards connections with other adults. So if I want my mentee to know other people that can be a good resource for her, I want her to get to know a village of people. But it also means connections with institutions. So our nonprofit has a community center. So we want our place to be safe in the neighborhood that we're in, right? So when our kids come here, we want them to know that this is a safe, good place, and that this is a place that they can come and feel cared about and feel loved. We also want schools to be a safe place for our kids. So helping kids identify, like, who's a teacher you can talk to? Is there a counselor that, like, when you're about to lose it, that you can talk to and help yourself not get upset? And if kids feel good at school, they're going to have a tendency to be more motivated, to want to do better, and that's going to impact pretty much all of life. And then we've also got character. And so character means that we have a sense of right and wrong, and we know how to act on it. So do I know that it's important that when I make a promise, I stand by it? That if I say I'm going to show up, I do that. Do I know that it's not the right thing to cheat on a test? Do I know that I need to not lie to my friends? That I need to, if my mom asks me to do something to help around the house, that I need to do that, that I need to treat my younger sister well. And the fifth C is caring. And that means having a sense of sympathy or empathy. So is there a kid sitting alone at school who doesn't really have many friends? Do I have the sense of empathy to maybe go over and say hello and to be a good friend to that person? Are there causes in my community that I care about? Like, if I know that there are people that maybe struggle with being unhoused or dealing with hunger, are there things that my mentor and I can do to maybe help with that? Can we serve food at a kitchen somewhere? Is there a service project that we can engage in? So with the 5 C's, there is also a theory that if those 5 C's are very, very strongly in a young person, that a 6th C will emerge. And that, I know, I've shocked you, Zach, you didn't know this part, then that 6th C will be contribution. And so if those initial 5 C's are really developed, then a young person will be contributing to home, school, family, culture, society, those things. And so, like I said, they're both the process, the things that are good to kind of think about and kind of work on in our mentoring time, but also the outcomes that we would love to see in a young person.
Man, that's a great, if you're a mentoring nonprofit, if you're a church, if you're anyone who's been mentoring kids or overseeing that, focus on those 5 things.
Mm-hmm.
And the 6th thing will take care of itself.
Yeah.
But that's great. I mean, I should put those 5 C's up on my wall every day and just be, all right, I'm going to focus on these. But
yeah, we talk about those a lot. We're even in a couple of grants where those are the outcomes that we're tracking. So, yep.
Love it. I don't have time, to get into the 40 assets because there's 40 of them.
Yeah.
But I would love to tag those and put them in all of our all of our show notes. There's been a ton of really good things that we've talked about today. I will put all of those in our show notes, but just super fast. Can you just kind of tell us what are the 40 assets?
Yep. Yeah. So the 40 assets, it's a list of 40 things that are essentially, we could call them protective factors. And the idea is that the more of these that a young person has, the more likely they are to contribute, to make good choices, and the less likely they are to engage in risky or negative behavior. 20 of them are internal things, so things that would have to do like values, things, motivations, things that drive them, and 20 of them are external, things that have to do with family, community, things like that. Search Institute are the lovely folks who have kind of researched and come up with that list. That's a great resource for all things youth development, really. But they've got lots of more information about that list. That is a list we give to our mentors at our new mentor training, just to kind of think about.
That's awesome, Maggie.
Yeah.
I love it. Man, we've talked about so much good stuff today. We talked about focusing on the good stuff. We talked about how your mentee isn't he or she. It's our job to fix them. It is our job to love them, exposing their gifts, telling them what they're good at. We've talked about how to empower. We've talked about the big 3, the 5 C's, 40 assets. Man,
that's hours.
I know, right? It's awesome. But tell us how to learn more about you and what you do, and how can people find you?
Yeah, I would love to chat with anyone. As I told you earlier, Zach, I love to talk about mentoring. I love to talk about PYD. I kind of nerd out about this stuff. So feel free to look me up on Amachi Lexington. I can be found there. I'm at, if you want to put these in the show notes too, my email address is mmiddleton@lexlf.org. So feel free to find me on social media. Um, uh, any of the famous ones, or just email me. And I'd love to talk. I love to talk about these things. I love to talk with other mentoring programs and just see how we can share ideas. So it's my big desire just that all kids have the mentoring resources they need, and that mentors have what they need to be able to really care for, and impact kids. So, but
Awesome,
loved
Maggie.
being here, Zach. This was great.
Thank you so much for all of your wisdom and for your time
More,
and for your expertise on PYD.
yes,
And super
yeah,
excited about sharing all of this stuff with our audience. So
yeah, absolutely.
thank you so much for tuning into the You Can Mentor podcast. Check out our conference, our learning labs, the podcast, the books, all the things can be found on social media, on our websites. Yeah, learn more about what we do, learn more about what Maggie does. If you missed all the stuff today, you're missing out. But remember this, you can mentor.